Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Roundup. Just a quick reminder that we're about 2 months away from Retro World Expo in Hartford, Connecticut, and there's already been a bunch of awesome people announced on their website, panelists, guests, people with booths, and just some awesome people that are going to be coming. So I'll announce more people as the weeks go on, but I just wanted to give everybody a heads up because it's always challenging booking hotels and making sure all that stuff works. But anyway, links are in the description if you want to go, but let's for now jump in and just see what's been going on in the past week. First up, Hidden Palace via Mr. Pinball 64 and Bill's Cat Socks have just released a canceled Game Boy Advance game called Animaniacs Hollywood Hypnotics, which is based off of the cartoon about that era. And the game's a bit rough around the edges, but it's able to be completed. And it's a pretty awesome look into what would have been for a game that seemed like it could have been a lot of fun. So, according to the news post, there's some gameplay issues that need to be refined, as well as some glitches and the potential to get stuck in the game due to certain progression being unclear. But it seems like it has potential because the Animaniacs TV show always had kind of a certain quirky charm to it. And I think the story behind it was pretty interesting as well. I didn't feel comfortable just copying and pasting that from Hidden Palace, so please just check the link in the post if you want to read the full story. But basically, it at the very least seems like a fun thing to read if you like reading about and learning about found canceled video games. And if you want to give it a try, the ROM's there as well, so you'll be able to try it on anything that could play Game Boy Advance ROMs, including the Mister. So give that a shot if you're interested, but it looks fun. It looks like worth somebody's time if you're into the Animaniacs games or that TV show back in the day. Next, Humble Bazooka's JAG AIOA and AIOA Plus are back in stock and ready to ship. The price is $45 for the one with just video outputs and $75 for the one that also has the JAG Netlink adapter built in. Now, I do always want to be blunt about this. Two things. First, I love that I bought the Plus edition for my Jaguar. I love that that chunky thing is sitting in back, and if I ever feel the need to do a net play on a Jaguar game, I have the ability to do so. But it's ridiculous. That's for people who love the Jaguar or who actually might use any of the net play features. If you just want really high quality video output, get the $45 one and you're not missing anything. But the other one's ridiculous, and I absolutely love it, and I promote it every time it comes back up for sale, just because it's every feature you could want. It's future-proof, future past-proof. And I don't know. I think it's ridiculous, and I think it's the perfect match for a Jaguar. However, the video and audio circuits are the same on both, and they work with a Genesis 2 mini DIN, which gets you RGB output, but it also has composite video and audio broken out via RCA connectors and an S-Video jack, and everything is safe to use simultaneously. That means any cables that sync on composite video, like the RetroTink cables, HD RetroVision, or just sync on composite Genesis 2 cables, can be used at the same time as the composite video out. Or you could get a Genesis 2 composite cable and have two composite video outs at the same time, although I don't know why you'd want to do that, but it is absolutely safe to do so. Same with the audio. You could connect both the RCA jacks and the mini DIN at the same time. So it really is a completely feature-packed audio and video adapter. But once again, I'm happy I spent the extra $30 and got the ridiculous one for me, just because. Also, Stone Age Gamer had a 4th of July sale. I'm not really sure. It's probably all over by now, but who knows? Maybe if they still have stock of something and you want to check their website, give it a try. Also, if you want deep dive reviews on both of these adapters, I had previous posts on them. I just, rather than waste people's time, I figured I'd give the basic overview and then point you back in that direction if you want more info. Next, Humble Bazooka's Neo BT Bluetooth adapter is also back in stock and ready to ship, and this is a plug-and-play adapter compatible with all original Neo Geo consoles, so MVS with the controller ports, AES, and Neo Geo CD, as well as any Supergun that has the same pinout, and you could definitely use, start, coin, and up to 4 buttons. I'm not sure if it could have support for buttons 5 and 6 on Superguns, but point is, if you're playing Neo Geo games or anything with 4 buttons or less, this is an excellent adapter to use, as it utilizes Darth Cloud's Blue Retro platform, which is very low latency when you think about what a Bluetooth controller might be. So if you pair this with something like a modern PlayStation controller, you're talking about less than half a frame of latency, which is really, really good. You could also pair this with 8BitDo's Neo Geo CD style controller, and Humble Bazooka has instructions on their website showing how to pair it. So I think it's a little bit quirky, but if you have the the printout right here. You know, just print this out and stick it next to your console or save it on your phone or something. It's easy once you kind of get the hang of it. Beast also seemed to really like that controller as well. My personal preference was that anytime I wanted to play an arcade style game with a controller, I liked that clicky D-pad thing, but not really for anything else. But I mean, Neo Geos are all arcade games, so that's kind of the perfect match for it. So links to everything are right here if you're interested, but this one's very cool if you're looking for a Bluetooth controller adapter for your Neo Geos or most Superguns. Next up, Tito from Macho Nacho Productions recently posted a video about how to install RetroNAS onto a UGreen NAS box. And I thought this was a really important video because I've been looking for a long time for a dedicated NAS device that allows you to load your own software. Most of the devices that look like this, small boxes that are barely bigger than the drives that slide into them, use their own proprietary software and won't allow you to install anything else on top of it. But apparently this one can, which means you could install RetroNAS as the native OS for this, or maybe even UnRAID, which I'll get to that later. And I think this is an interesting use case because while, of course, you should always have your stuff backed up in more than one place, there's a lot to be said for somebody just wanting to run RAID 1 for their ROMs so that if one drive dies, you always have a backup, or I guess RAID 5 if you want multiple. And UGreen sells a 2-bay version of this. So I think that's perfect for people that just want to run RAID 1, which means each file is copied to both drives. So if you have 10 terabytes, you still only have 10 total terabytes of storage. But if one of those drives ever dies, you put the other, just replace it and it rebuilds itself. So that's a pretty handy feature. And Tito also showed how to install Cockpit as well as RAID using software from the RetroNAS software. So I just think this is awesome. And by the way, if anybody knows anybody at UGreen that's willing to lend me a couple of these, I'd love to do some videos showing people exactly how these things work. And if they're good enough, I'd even buy one to replace my UnRAID server. But there are a couple of things that you might want to note about this. First, Tito made it very, very clear that RetroNAS is feature-filled, but this video is just focusing on him using it with his PlayStation 2. But there are a million other things that you might want to do with this. So thanks, Tito, for making sure that was very clear. But also, RetroNAS, depending on what features that you open up on it, might also open up some security issues. But if you're the type of person that wants to put a retro PC on the internet, you probably already know that. RetroNAS, is one of its many uses, is exactly that, acting as a gateway. So having a dedicated device like a Raspberry Pi or a NAS box or an UnRAID virtual machine as your RetroNAS server is pretty handy because then you could just turn it on whenever you need it. And these things boot very quickly. So if it's one of those scenarios of, oh, you're annoyed that you have to turn it on every time you use it, just make it part of your workflow. Turn that on first, then go power on your consoles, grab your controller and sit down. And by the time you sit down, everything's probably up and running. So if there are any security issues, having that just dedicated is awesome. And, who knows too, maybe somebody will also figure out a way to have different containers installed on proprietary software like the Synology stuff. I've never been really a big fan of that. I'm more into do-it-yourself solutions, and I think UnRAID is a good choice, but I'm going to talk about that next. And speaking of RetroNAS, I've been running it as a virtual machine on my UnRAID server for almost 3 years now, basically since it was first made available by a process Dustin, aka Dasutin, wrote up, and it has been flawless ever since. I have not had a single issue with RetroNAS, and really almost none with UnRAID either, until I updated to a recent version. I'm not sure how recent, because while I usually like the newest firmware on everything, the stuff that I really rely on, things like servers, I don't update unless I feel like I have to. So it had been a lot of different updates. I figured I'd give it a chance. And as soon as I updated, RetroNAS stopped working. The VM just wouldn't boot. However, the fix is really, really easy. All you have to do is log into your UnRAID server's web interface, go to the VM tab, click on the VM's logo, not the name. I don't know why they do it that way. Hit edit, switch to XML view, and then delete one line. If you're an OCD nerd like me, copy and paste everything in XML view, copy everything in that and paste it into a notepad file just so you have a backup of the previous configuration, and then just delete that one line, save it, and start the VM. You don't need to add anything. You don't need to reboot anything. You might want to reboot, but the VM just started perfectly for me, and that's it. That is the only thing required. And I really do think this is an excellent combination of worlds right here, because You could leave RetroNAS running 24/7, or you could only turn on the VM when you need it for certain things, which I think is awesome because if you open it up for retro PCs to connect to the internet, you might not want that open all the time, or you could separate the ports and secure it. There's a lot of awesome things that you could do. But the one thing that I love about UnRAID that I haven't really found in any NAS software is that if any one of your drives dies, you replace it and it rebuilds itself, just like basically all other RAID configurations other than 0, except it also, if you have a catastrophic failure and everything dies, the motherboard, the USB stick that you boot this off of, 2 of the 5 hard drives, whatever drives are left can be readable in any Linux machine. And while, of course, RAID is never a substitute for a backup, what if you have a scenario in which, like mine, right? I have all of my stuff on my PC. I use UnRAID as both a backup and to run services and processes that I want going kind of 24/7. So what if the drive dies on the server? I do have another copy, but as I'm then accessing that copy to try to copy it over to something else, what if something else goes wrong? What if lightning strikes? What if I drink too much beer, trip and fall on my server? Like, you never really know what's going to happen. So you could just get 3 or 4 backups of everything, or you could have a RAID server like this, so that as that one drive that died, you could just put another one in, it rebuilds, and you still have your files in multiple locations. So while it's definitely not a replacement for an actual backup or a second copy, this is the backup for me, it does add another layer of protection that I just think is very important. So, if you're interested in this stuff, I did a whole interview with Space Invader 1, Ed, about UnRAID and how much I like it. I also did the interview with Dan about RetroNAS, and Ed's installer for RetroNAS on UnRAID should be updated soon enough with this fix. As soon as it is, I'll write a post on it. But yeah, I'm fired up. I think this is great, and I would love to borrow one of those UGreen NAS boxes to try to do exactly this, to recreate my setup on a dedicated little box. So once again, if anybody has any contacts there, please let me know. I'd love to borrow a bunch of them, do a couple of videos, and then just send them back. I don't want anything for free. I want to test to see if they actually work as good as Tito showed, which it should, but I also want to test it with UnRAID and the combination of stuff. And can VMs run at full speed? Are they too slow for that? All the stuff my fellow nerds are already saying, if you get that, make sure to test this too, which of course I would. So please let me know if anybody has any contacts there. But if not, who knows? Maybe I could just try to pick one up at some point in the future. So a while back, we talked about the region fix for Cosam's Neptune boards, and Chrissy has just released the design for a small flex cable that makes this a little bit easier. You're still soldering to one very, very tiny pin, so this is not an easy thing to do, but it definitely makes it easier. You could have it printed in any place, any fab house that can make flex cables. I believe Chrissy had this designed for JLC PCB, but should be able to use it on all of them. And all you really need to do is tack it in place and then solder the 2 points. And Chrissy used blue tack to keep it in. Some people could use Kapton tape. You could use hot glue, whatever. As long as you tack it in place, solder the 2 points, and then remove the tack carefully when you're done, that's fine. I think it's not going to make this a beginner job, but it might make it more of an intermediate than advanced, and advanced users are just going to have a cleaner install and an easier time doing it. So thanks to Chrissy for making this. It's a small but really helpful tool to have, and it should be pretty cheap to order. So if you want more info on exactly what this board is, what it does, please check out Tito's video on it. And if you want more info on the region fix and what happened there, you can check out the post I did in the live stream. But basically, if you know what I'm talking about, you're probably going, I haven't done the fix yet. I think I'll pick one of those up just in case. So thanks, Chrissy, for making that. Retrobit have just opened pre-orders on another Sega Genesis re-release, this time for a Japan-only Mega Drive game called Undeadline, which is apparently a very hard vertical shooter, but a game that's really rare and hard to find. And when I did some searches for it, all the complete and box ones were very, very expensive. So the price of $60 is absolutely awesome when you take that into consideration. This is not like a cash grab reissue of a game you can get at a game store for $1. This is a high quality, well-made, complete in-box game with a PC designed by Renee from DB Electronics. So you're getting top-tier quality, beveled edges, the right voltage. You're getting the same quality that you would get with an original game from that era, but the price is much, much cheaper than getting the Mega Drive version. Plus, there's localization done by engineer Nathan Darren and translated by Jonathan Antonoli. And I also think it's awesome that Retrobit is calling out their translators, mostly because I like seeing great people get good recognition for a lot of hard work. But also, this kind of, you don't have to worry about people saying, you know, oh, who translated it? What happened? Did you just put it through AI and hope it spit out correctly? Like, no, Retrobit got some actual humans to do the work. And the only changes in the game are the English translation, as well as just some of the licensing stuff that you see at the beginning. But other than that, it's the same very hard game. The pre-orders will remain open until August 10th, and then they should hit customers before the end of the year. So overall, this just looks like a game where if you were into original physical media and you wanted to play a unique game that's, you know, and you liked punishing shooters, this is probably for you. Check out the post and the links to show exactly what you get with this, which is, you know, just basically like a full featured complete in box thing. And there's also a video embedded if you want to see what to expect in the game. But you know, I think this is potentially another win for Retrobit because it checks all the boxes. You know, it's stupidly expensive to buy it. It's a game that I think a lot of people would be interested in. And as long as they're continuing to be made well, then this is great. And I know I say this every time to the point where it's annoying, but when you get these reissues, take pictures of the PCB, take pictures of the beveled edge, and put that stuff on social media, because we should be praising good companies even more than calling out the bad ones, because that just kind of sets the precedent. You know, I'd rather have a bunch of people annoyed because they keep seeing posts of perfectly beveled edges than a bunch of people throwing their arms up in the air going, why the heck did I buy another reissue that's, you know, that's bad? We got to get this good info out to people, and no better way to do it than through positivity, right? I just did a live stream about new Super Nintendo controller accessories, and I wanted to give a basic overview here because I think there was a lot of really good information, but as with all of these slow in real-time live streams, I don't want to have everybody have to sit through hours to get to it. So here's a short overview that I think anybody who with a Super Nintendo controller or anything like that might be interested in. So first, I showed off Retro Game Restore's SNES controller shells. They're meant to match the Retro Game Restore console shells, but you could just use this for basically any original Super Nintendo controller. And they look awesome. The only downside is you really want to tap the screw holes before you put it all together. And you don't want to use crappy screws. I bought a bag of like 50 low-end screws for $1 on, you know, AliExpress or eBay or something, and the heads were just snapping off left and right. And side note, if anybody knows easy ways to get screws out of these, let me know, because I think this is going to be some crazy surgery to get this fixed. But anyway, so use good screws. I believe Retro Game Restore is either going to start offering them, or at the very least, maybe we could get links to really high quality ones. In my notes, it was M2.3 by either 6 or 8 millimeters. So if anybody knows a link on where to get really good ones, just put it in the description. Remember, if it's an Amazon link, just use that B code they have there, because YouTube deletes all links to stuff like that. But use good screws and tap them first. I do understand why Retro Game Restore doesn't pre-tap these, because what if they pre-tap them from original console screws, but the ones that you bought are not quite the same thickness, then you have a loose fit. I get it, but just tap the screw first, like before you assemble anything. Take the front thing, screw it in almost all the way, because remember, it's not as much room, or there'll be more space than when you have the whole thing sandwiched together. And also always flip it over to check that you're not going too deep, so you're not going to be pulling dimples into the plastic. But tap it first. I would screw each screw in twice. Do it very carefully and not at an angle so you don't snap the heads like I did. Then when you assemble it all, everything should just go in just fine and there'd be no other issues. The only other thing to note is some of the people who bought the first batch of these clear controllers got buttons as well, just as a fun little bonus. And they're all keyed to the individual buttons on the SNES controller. It took a couple of different fails for me to realize that, mostly because I'm going blind with my short-term vision, or short-sighted vision. I could still, from like arm's length out, I still have perfect vision, but close to my face, I basically need bifocals or whatever. So once I figured that out, everything dropped in place. They worked fine. Not everybody's going to be getting them. Those are just the first run of production. But if you get those, each button has its own slot to go in, and just kind of look carefully and match them up. And you'll be able to tell. If they push like a normal Super Nintendo or Super Famicom button, you win. If not, you just got to rearrange them. As for the J&T Studio braided cable that I installed as well, that was great. The only, if you want to call it a downside, is the connector where you plug the original SNES cable into is proprietary and you can't get them anymore. So J&T Studio includes 2 of these new connectors in there in case you mess one up. I thought that was a nice touch. I didn't, shockingly. But this was just about the easiest desolder and resolder I've done. I would call this an absolute beginner job. So if you just bought a desoldering iron and you're kind of looking for projects, and you wanted to, like your pet ate your SNES controller cable, definitely do this one. It's a one that is very, very easy. I showed it all on stream, no mistakes there. And it's oriented the same way, so you don't even need to check the pin out. Just make sure it's in the same direction as the original. And the only other thing to note about the braided cable is it's already made in a way where you don't have to run the same strain relief. So just those basic rubber cables, you have to run it through the loops on Super Nintendo controllers. But on this one, you just run it along the side. So the L-shaped bracket on the back plastic holds it in place. I showed it on stream. You could very clearly see it through the transparent shells that strain relief is excellent. So I liked them. They come in 2 different sizes, Super Famicom length and Super Nintendo length, maybe a little longer than Super Nintendo, which I think is awesome. So just if you want to pick up one of those, links to both of those are right here, as well as the full posts on it and everything. And the only other thing to mention is J&T Studio is working on replacement D-pad membranes that are as high quality as their NES ones that were just released. So I tested some very cheap ones that I got from Console 5 in the live stream, and the face button ones and the start and select ones worked absolutely perfect. So like the 4 right thumb buttons, all that was no problems whatsoever, but the D-pad itself wasn't as responsive as the original. And the one from J&T Studio was the most responsive. Now, I'm going to do a follow-up stream where I repair the last controller, I get the last piece that I need, and kind of, go from there. But I think I'm going to test out something that's pretty demanding. Maybe some of those awesome NES to SNES conversions, and I'll use each of these different controllers with different D-pads in it. The original, the cheap replacement, and the J&T Studio replacement. But it's looking like these are going to be a great choice. They have not hit main production yet, I think. I don't think they're up for sale yet. We'll, of course, write a post as soon as they are. But we might finally have a good D-pad replacement for SNES controllers. And I'm down to 1 solid controller at my house now. Out of all the SNES controllers I have, whether it's third-party, USB, or original, only 1 has a D-pad that works good enough. So I'm really looking forward to testing it out in that as well, so I could see how these things affect gameplay. But I'll obviously be doing another follow-up on that one. I just wanted to give people a heads up. If you're not in a rush and you need new membranes for your SNES, wait on the D-pad one, because J&T Studio might absolutely have the replacement for you. So I think that's basically the entire stream summed up in about 5-ish minutes. And it's good info to have, and still watch the stream if you feel like it, but I don't think there's any other info you might need out of there. And I will do a follow-up, but I had fun doing this one. I think it's a great beginner project, and I'm really, I have the controllers kind of hanging around here so I could stretch out the braided cable to make it nice and smooth with no crimps, and they just look awesome. I think the biggest issue for me is whether I keep the clear buttons or the original SNES buttons in the different colors. But anyway, check out the stream if you want, but everything I just said is pretty much all you need to know. Well, that's it for this week. As always, thanks to everybody who watches, listens, plays nicely in the comments, and especially thank you to anybody who supports in absolutely any way, because it really is you who's keeping all this stuff going. So thank you all so much, and I'll see you next week. This week's Roundup is brought to you by Neo Paradigm Entertainment, connecting Southeast Asian influencers with opportunities in the West.